There is a man standing at the edge of a cliff in ancient Rome. The wind is sharp. Below him, the empire he commands stretches to the horizon. Armies, treasuries, palaces, more power than almost any human being in history has ever held. And yet tonight alone, he takes out a small wax tablet and writes a single sentence to himself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That man is Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome. And he is not writing this because he feels powerful. He is writing it because he feels, like you might feel right now, that happiness keeps slipping through his fingers, no matter how much he acquires, achieves, or controls. Here is the question that is going to haunt you for the rest of this video. If the most powerful man in the ancient world had to train himself daily just to feel a baseline sense of peace, what makes you think happiness is supposed to just happen to you? It's not supposed to happen to you. It's supposed to be built, trained, practiced, like a muscle, like a language, like a craft. And today, we are going to show you exactly how the Stoics did it. Not as some dusty philosophy from 2,000 years ago, but as a working, practical, almost mechanical system for training your mind to find happiness on ordinary Tuesdays, in traffic jams, during arguments with people you love, in the middle of grief, and even facing your own mortality. By the end of this video, you will understand why some of the most miserable people, are also the most successful, and why some of the most content people have almost nothing. You will understand the difference between happiness that depends on the world and happiness that depends on you. And you will walk away with a daily mental training system used by emperors, slaves, and everyday people for over 2,000 years that you can start using tonight. Stay with us until the end, because the final technique we reveal, the one Marcus Aurelius used the night before battles he thought he might not survive, as the single most powerful tool in this entire philosophy. If you only take one thing from this video, it should be that one. But you'll miss it if you leave early. Let's begin. Welcome back to Wisdom of the Stoics, where we take 2,000 years of hard-won philosophy and turn it into something you can actually use today, in your actual life. Ancient wisdom for the modern mind. If that sounds like what you're here for, let's get into it. Let's start with an uncomfortable truth. Most of what you've been taught about happiness is backwards. You've been taught that happiness is a destination. Get the job, get the relationship, get the house, get the body, get the recognition, and then, finally, you'll arrive at happiness. It's sitting there waiting for you, like a hotel room with your name on the reservation. The Stoics discovered over 2,000 years ago that this is a trap. Not a metaphorical trap, a literal, mechanical trap, built into how the human mind processes desire. Here's how the trap works. You want something. You get it. For a brief moment, you feel good. Then your mind, very quietly, very efficiently, resets its baseline. The thing you just achieved becomes the new normal, and almost immediately, a new want appears to take its place. Psychologists today call this the hedonic treadmill. The Stoics didn't have that term, but they understood the mechanism perfectly. Seneca, writing to his friend Lucilius, described watching wealthy Romans who owned more than entire nations do today, and yet who complained, worried, and suffered exactly as much as the poorest citizens in the city. He wasn't surprised. He expected it. Let's meet someone who is living this trap right now. Elena has been a marketing director for 6 years. When she was promoted, she told herself, "This is it. This is when I'll finally relax." 6 months later, she was applying for the VP role, convinced that would be the real finish line. She got the VP role 18 months after that. She cried when she got the offer, from relief, not joy. 3 weeks later, she was lying awake at 2 a.m., already anxious about the next rung. Elena is not weak. Elena is not ungrateful. Elena is running headfirst into a mechanism that has trapped nearly every ambitious human being in history. The Stoics have a name for what she's chasing. Externals. Things outside her control. Things the world gives and the world can take away. And here is the core Stoic insight. the one that changes everything once you actually absorb it. As long as your happiness depends on externals, you will never ever arrive. There is no version of enough money, enough achievement, or enough approval that will satisfy a mind that has been trained to locate happiness outside of itself. So if happiness isn't found in externals, where is it? This is where the Stoics make their most radical claim, one that sounds almost too simple to be profound, and yet, once understood, restructures the entire way you experience your life. Happiness is not a possession. Happiness is a skill, and like any skill, it can be trained. Take a second and think about how strange this idea would have sounded to Elena a year ago. That happiness isn't something she needs to earn through a promotion. It's something she needs to practice, the same way she practices public speaking or negotiation. If that idea unsettles you a little, good. That means you're starting to see the trap for what it is. Drop a comment below telling us what's the next rung you've been chasing, thinking it would finally be enough. You might be surprised how many people in the comments are chasing the exact same thing. To understand how the Stoics trained happiness, you need to understand the single most important idea in the entire philosophy, the foundation everything else is built on. It's called the dichotomy of control, and it comes most directly from a former slave named Epictetus. Epictetus began his life in chains, literally. He was born into slavery in the Roman Empire, and by some historical accounts, his own master once twisted his leg so violently that it left him permanently disabled. And yet Epictetus is remembered today not as a victim, but as one of the most powerful teachers of personal freedom who has ever lived. How does a man in chains become a teacher of freedom? Because he discovered something his captors could never take from him. Here is the idea in his own words, as recorded by his student Arian. Some things are up to us, and some things are not up to us. Up to us are our opinions, our impulses, our desires, our aversions, in short, everything that is our own doing. Not up to us are our body, our property, our reputation, our position, in short, everything that is not our own doing. Let that sink in. Epictetus is saying that the only things truly, completely under your control are your judgments, your intentions and your responses. Everything else, your health, other people's opinions of you, your bank account, whether it rains tomorrow, whether your boss appreciates you, all of it is, in some sense, not fully yours to control. Most people live their entire lives with this backwards. They pour enormous emotional energy into controlling things they cannot control. Other people's behavior, the economy, the past, the future, and they neglect the one thing they actually can master, their own mind. Let's bring this to life with James. James is stuck in traffic. He is going to be late for an important meeting. His jaw is tight, his knuckles are white on the steering wheel, and internally he is having an entire argument with a traffic system that cannot hear him. He is furious at the other drivers. He is furious at the city planners. He is furious at himself for not leaving earlier. By the time he arrives at his meeting, 15 minutes late, he is not just late, he is depleted, angry, off his game for the rest of the day. Now here's the Stoic reframe. The traffic itself was never in James's control. The moment he left the house, the departure time, other drivers, construction, accidents, none of that belonged to him. What belonged to him completely and totally was how he responded to being stuck. He could have used that 15 minutes to mentally prepare for his meeting, to breathe, to listen to something that calmed him. Instead, he spent it fighting a battle he had already lost the moment he got in the car. This is not about pretending the traffic doesn't matter. It's about recognizing where your actual power lies. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this constantly in his private journal, which we now call Meditations, a book he never intended anyone else to read. He reminded himself again and again that the obstacle in the path becomes the path. External events are not good or bad in themselves. It is our judgment about them that creates the suffering. Here's a practical way to apply the dichotomy of control today. Whenever you feel a surge of anxiety, frustration, or anger, pause and ask yourself one question. Is this within my control? If the answer is no, release it, the way you'd release a rope in a tug-of-war against a truck. You were never going to win that pull anyway. If the answer is yes, act. Don't worry. Don't ruminate. Act. This single distinction, practiced daily, is one of the most powerful mental training tools that exists. And it costs nothing. It requires no possessions, no achievements, no external validation. Epictetus proved that with his own life. A man who owned almost nothing was once literally owned by another person, and yet taught some of the freest minds in Roman history, including Marcus Aurelius himself. Think about the parts of your life right now where you're pouring energy into things outside your control. Maybe it's a co-worker's opinion of you. Maybe it's something that happened years ago that you still replay at night. Let us know in the comments. What's one thing you've been trying to control that you're finally ready to let go of? And if this idea is landing for you, take a second to hit like right now. It helps this message reach more people who are stuck exactly where James was in that traffic jam. Once you understand the dichotomy of control, the Stoics give you a practical framework for actually applying it in daily life. This is sometimes called the three disciplines, and it was most clearly organized by the modern philosopher Pierre Hadot, drawing on the structure found throughout Marcus Aurelius's own writing. The three disciplines are the discipline of perception, the discipline of action, and the discipline of will. The discipline of perception is about training how you interpret events. Marcus Aurelius wrote that if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your judgment about it. And this judgment you have the power to revoke at any moment. This is not about denying reality. It's about separating the raw fact of an event from the story you immediately layer on top of it. Here's an example. Your friend doesn't respond to your text for 3 days. The raw fact, no response. The story your mind immediately generates. They're ignoring me. They're mad at me. I did something wrong. Our friendship is falling apart. Notice, none of that second part is fact. It's interpretation. And it's the interpretation, not the silence itself, that's making you suffer. The discipline of perception asks you to catch that story-generating process in real time and ask, what do I actually know? Not what do I fear, not what do I assume, what do I know? The discipline of action governs how you behave toward other people, specifically that you should act for the common good, with justice, and without expecting anything in return. Marcus Aurelius reminds himself each morning, in one of the most famous passages of Meditations, that he will meet people who are ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, and disagreeable that day, and that he must meet them anyway with patience, because that is simply what it means to be a human being living among other human beings. He doesn't wait to be surprised by difficult people. He expects them and prepares his response in advance. The discipline of will, sometimes called the discipline of desire, is the deepest one, and it's the one most directly tied to happiness. It asks you to align your desires with what actually happens, rather than demanding that reality conform to your wishes. This doesn't mean passivity. It means wanting what is, while still working diligently for what could be. Let's watch these three disciplines play out through Marco. Marco has just been passed over for a promotion he worked 18 months to earn. His initial reaction is rage, at his manager, at the co-worker who got the role instead, at the unfairness of it all. Discipline of perception. Marco pauses and separates fact from story. Fact, he did not get the promotion. Story, I'm not valued. I'll never advance here. This proves I'm not good enough. He challenges the story. He doesn't yet know why the decision was made. He commits to gathering facts before building a narrative. Discipline of action. Marco decides how he will treat his manager and his co-worker in the coming days. Not with passive aggression, not with sabotage, but with the same professionalism he would have shown if he'd gotten the role. Because his integrity is his to control, the outcome was not. Discipline of will. Marco does the hardest part. He sits with the disappointment, And instead of demanding the universe rearrange itself around his plan, he asks, given that this is what happened, what is the most useful next action? He requests honest feedback. He recommits to his own growth, independent of whether anyone else notices. Marco still feels the sting of disappointment. Stoicism was never about suppressing emotion, despite what popular culture often gets wrong about it. But he doesn't let the sting metastasize into weeks of resentment. That is the entire difference between a Stoic response and an ordinary one, not the absence of feeling, but the refusal to let an external event dictate the state of his mind for longer than the initial honest reaction. This is a good moment to pause the video mentally and ask yourself, which of the three disciplines is hardest for you? Is it perception, catching your own stories before they run away with you? Is it action, treating difficult people with patience? Or is it will, actually accepting outcomes you didn't choose? Type your answer in the comments. We read everyone, and it helps us know what to cover in future videos. Now we arrive at a technique that sounds, on the surface, completely insane. It is called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity, and it is, according to both ancient practitioners and modern psychological research, one of the most effective tools ever devised for increasing gratitude and reducing anxiety. Here is the technique in its simplest form. Each morning or evening, spend a few minutes imagining losing something you currently have: your health, your home, a relationship, your job. Not to torture yourself, but to briefly feel the absence of what you normally take for granted. Seneca practiced this obsessively. In his letters to Lucilius, he describes deliberately imagining exile, poverty, and even death, not because he was pessimistic, but because he understood something profound about human psychology. We only fully appreciate what we have once we imagine it gone. Think about this from your own life. Have you ever nearly lost something? A phone? With your calls unanswered for a terrifying hour, a health scare that turned out to be nothing, a near miss on the highway, and felt a wave of gratitude wash over you in the aftermath? For a day or two after, you appreciated your life more intensely than you had in months. Then slowly the appreciation faded, and you went back to taking it all for granted. Negative visualization is a way of manufacturing that gratitude on purpose without needing an actual crisis to trigger it. Let's return to Elena, our marketing director from earlier. Every morning, before she even checks her phone, Elena now spends 90 seconds doing something that used to feel morbid to her. She imagines what her life would be like if she lost her job tomorrow. Not to spiral, but to notice with total clarity how much of her current life she takes for granted. The steady paycheck, the colleagues who make her laugh, the simple fact of having somewhere meaningful to direct her energy each day. By the time she opens her email, she is not dreading the day, she is oddly grateful for it. The meetings she used to find tedious now feel like evidence of a stable, functioning career she nearly imagined away. This technique also works powerfully with relationships. Imagine just for a moment coming home to find that someone you love wasn't there anymore. Don't dwell in it. Just let the feeling arrive, fully for 10 or 15 seconds. Now open your eyes and look at that person, or think of them as they actually are, right now in your life. Notice how different they suddenly feel. This isn't about manufacturing fear. It's about stripping away the numbness that familiarity creates, so you can actually see what's already in front of you. There's a companion idea here that Marcus Aurelius returns to constantly. Memento mori, remember that you will die. This sounds dark, but Marcus uses it as a tool for prioritization, not despair. If you remembered, with total clarity, that your time was finite, would you really spend the next hour scrolling in irritation at a stranger's opinion online? Would you really let a minor slight from a co-worker consume your entire evening? Mortality, held in mind gently rather than obsessively, has a remarkable way of clarifying what actually deserves your emotional energy. Try this tonight. Before you fall asleep, spend 2 minutes imagining the ordinary parts of your life: your bed, your family in the next room, your body that got you through the day, as things that could, someday not be there. Don't rush past this. Sit with it. Then let it go and notice how differently your ordinary Tuesday suddenly feels. If this section is hitting you in a way you didn't expect, that's not an accident. This is one of the most quietly powerful techniques in the entire Stoic tradition. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we go deep into techniques like this every single week, and you don't want to miss the ones still coming. Here's a mental exercise Marcus Aurelius returned to again and again, especially during moments of overwhelming pressure as emperor. It's called the view from above, and it's disarmingly simple, though its effects are profound. Picture yourself rising up out of your body, up above your house, your street, your city. Keep rising, above the country, above the continent, until you can see the curve of the earth. Now keep going. See the whole planet, small and blue, suspended in a vast, silent darkness, one point of light among billions of stars. From that vantage point, ask yourself, how large is the problem that's been consuming your entire evening? Marcus used this exercise to put the enormous pressures of running an empire, wars, plagues, political betrayals, into proportion. Not to dismiss them as unimportant, but to strip away the exaggerated, catastrophic weight the mind tends to assign to problems when we're standing too close to them. This is something almost everyone has experienced without realizing. It was a Stoic technique. Think of a time you were consumed by anxiety over something, a mistake at work, an awkward conversation, a decision you regretted, and then, months later, you could barely remember why it felt so enormous. Time itself performed the view from above for you, automatically, whether you wanted it to or not. The Stoic technique simply lets you borrow that same perspective right now, instead of waiting months for the feeling to fade naturally. James, our commuter from earlier, uses a version of this technique whenever he feels his temper rising at work. When his manager criticizes his project in front of the team, his first instinct is humiliation, followed by resentment that lasts the rest of the day. But increasingly, James has trained himself to pause and ask, in the context of my entire life, my children, my health, the relationships that actually matter to me, how much space does this one comment deserve? Usually the honest answer is far less than it's currently taking up. This isn't about becoming numb to criticism or pretending problems don't matter. It's about proportion. A comment from a manager in one meeting is a small data point in a life that contains thousands of meetings, relationships and experiences. Giving it more emotional real estate than it deserves is not sensitivity. It's a kind of mental miscalibration that the Stoics specifically trained themselves to correct. Try this the next time you feel a wave of frustration rising over something relatively minor. Mentally zoom out, not to shame yourself for caring, but to recalibrate the scale. Ask, will this matter in a year? In 5 years? On your deathbed, looking back at your whole life, will this specific moment even register? For most day-to-day frustrations, the honest answer is no. And once you see that clearly, the grip the problem has on you loosens almost immediately. There is a phrase in Stoic adjacent philosophy, popularized later by Nietzsche, but rooted deeply in Stoic thought, that captures perhaps the most advanced form of Stoic happiness training, amor fati, love of fate. This is the practice of not merely accepting what happens to you, but actively, deliberately choosing to love it, to treat every event, even painful ones, as necessary material for your own growth. Epictetus put it this way: don't seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish the events to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly. This is a radical reversal of how most people approach their lives. Most of us spend enormous energy wishing things were different, wishing we'd made different choices, wishing people treated us differently, wishing circumstances were easier. Amor fati asks something almost unthinkable. What if you stopped wishing your life were different, and instead treated your actual life, with all its scars, setbacks, and unwanted turns, as the exact raw material you need? This doesn't mean passivity in the face of injustice. And it doesn't mean pretending painful things are good. It means something more subtle, recognizing that resistance to what has already happened produces nothing but suffering, while acceptance, even active love, of what has happened frees enormous energy for what happens next. Marco, after being passed over for that promotion, eventually reaches this deeper stage. Months later, having gathered honest feedback, having grown into a more mature and self-aware version of himself, he realizes something startling. Getting that promotion when he originally wanted it would have placed him in a role he wasn't actually ready for. The setback, painful as it was, forced a period of growth he wouldn't have chosen, voluntarily but now recognizes as essential. This is not something Marco could have seen in the moment of disappointment. Amor fati is rarely available to us in real time. It usually arrives in hindsight. But here's the practice. The more you train yourself to trust that difficult events can become useful, even before you can see how, the faster you move through pain, and the less time you spend stuck in resentment against a past you cannot change. Marcus Aurelius wrote about obstacles becoming the way forward, that the impediment to action advances action, and what stands in the way becomes the way. This isn't a cute inspirational quote. It's a functional mental model. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" train yourself to ask, "What does this make possible that wasn't possible before?" This is advanced practice. Don't expect to master it overnight, and don't force it onto raw, fresh grief that can tip into denial rather than genuine acceptance. But as a long-term orientation toward your own life story, amor fati may be the single most liberating idea Stoicism has to offer. We've covered a lot of ground. Let's bring it together into something you can actually use starting tomorrow. Morning, and a simple, repeatable daily structure the Stoics themselves used, in some form, for over 1,000 years. Morning preparation. Before you check your phone, spend 2 to 3 minutes doing 2 things. First, a brief negative visualization. Mentally touch the things you have that could be lost. To generate genuine appreciation before the day's demands, crowd it out. Second, anticipate friction. Remind yourself, as Marcus Aurelius did, that you will likely encounter difficult people or frustrating events today, and decide in advance how you intend to meet them. Midday application. Throughout the day, whenever you feel a spike of frustration, anxiety, or anger, run the dichotomy of control test. Ask, is this within my power? If not, practice releasing it. Physically exhale, relax your shoulders and mentally set it down. If it is within your power, take one concrete action rather than spiraling in thought. Evening review. This is perhaps the most important and most neglected practice. Seneca describes in his writing a nightly habit of reviewing the entire day before sleep, not to punish himself, but to learn. Ask yourself 3 questions. What did I do well today? Where did I fall short of how I wanted to act? What will I do differently tomorrow? This isn't self-flagellation. It's calibration. The same way an athlete reviews game footage, not to feel bad, but to improve. This 3-part structure, morning preparation, midday application, evening review, is in essence the entire operating system of Stoic happiness training. It takes perhaps 10 minutes total out of your day, and unlike external achievements, which require luck, timing, and circumstances outside your control, this practice is entirely, completely within your power to execute every single day, regardless of what life throws at you. This is the actual answer to the question in our title. How do you train your mind to be happy every day? Not by controlling your circumstances. You can't. Not by acquiring more. It won't satisfy you. You train your mind to be happy by controlling the one variable that was always entirely yours, your relationship to whatever happens. Now the technique we promised at the beginning, the one Marcus Aurelius is said to have relied on the night before battles where his own survival was genuinely uncertain. Historians describe Marcus, in the Germanic campaigns near the end of his life, writing in his journal by candlelight, aware that the following day could be his last. He does not write about winning. He does not write about glory. He writes a single brief question to himself, some version of which appears throughout Meditations. What is the one thing that is truly mine, that no army, no wound, no outcome tomorrow can take from me? The answer every time is the same: his own character, his own choices, the way he treats the people around him in whatever time remains. This is the ultimate expression of everything we've covered today. If an emperor, facing the very real possibility of death by morning, could locate a stable core of peace by returning to what was truly within his control, then the disappointment of a missed promotion, the sting of an unanswered text, the frustration of a traffic jam, all of it becomes almost startlingly small by comparison. Try this tonight, in whatever form fits your life. Before sleep, ask yourself, if this were genuinely one of my final nights, what would actually matter? Which resentments would suddenly seem too small to carry? Which relationships would you want to repair? Which fears would reveal themselves as far less important than you'd been treating them? You don't need to face a battlefield to use this technique. You only need to remember that your time, like Marcus Aurelius's, is finite, and that the peace available to you doesn't depend on winning tomorrow. It depends on how you meet whatever tomorrow actually brings. Let's return to where we started. The emperor on the edge of that cliff, writing to himself in the wind. He wasn't writing because he had already mastered happiness. He was writing because, like you, like Elena, like James, like Marco, he had to practice it every single day for the rest of his life. That's the real secret hiding inside everything we've covered today. Happiness was never a destination you were failing to reach. It was always a skill you were never taught to train. The dichotomy of control shows you where your actual power lies. The three disciplines show you how to apply it to your perceptions, your actions, and your desires. Negative visualization and the view from above recalibrate your sense of scale and gratitude. And amor fati, the most advanced practice of all, teaches you to stop fighting your own life story and start using it. None of this requires wealth. None of it requires perfect circumstances. Epictetus proved that, starting his life in chains. Marcus Aurelius proved that, carrying the weight of an empire. And you can prove it too, starting with the very next moment that tests you, the next traffic jam, the next unanswered message, the next disappointment that used to ruin your whole day. We'd love to know, which single idea from today are you going to put into practice first? The morning visualization? The dichotomy of control? The evening review? Tell us in the comments and check back in. We read them and we want to know how it goes. If this video gave you even one tool you didn't have an hour ago, do us a favor and hit like. It helps this reach someone else who might need it exactly today. And if you want to keep training your mind with us, subscribe, because every week we bring these 2,000-year-old ideas back to life for the exact problems you're facing right now. Until next time, remember, you don't need to control the world. You only need to master your response to it. That has always been enough. This is wisdom of the Stoics. Ancient wisdom for the modern mind.